Ladies and gentlemen, this is History Summarized Ireland by the channel or the Sarcastic production. While the rest of Europe was flailing aimlessly through the Dark Ages, Ireland was both preserving the ancient world and setting the stage for medieval period. Then England showed up. Oh yeah, the potato famine taking all the lands and things. Yeah, History Summarized Ireland. I think I did the England and Scotland. So I'm like, yeah, Ireland. So this kind of completes it. So it's going to be fun. Remember, if you like my reaction, do not forget to like and subscribe. So I know which type of videos to react to more, historical videos or what. Check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out the cards or playlists like Oli Sarcastic production reaction playlist calculator for all the reaction videos I did for this channel. All the mythological videos, trope talks, history summarized. So check that out. Check out the playlist too, like Oversimplified, CGP Grey, Kazakhstan, Nutshell. And yeah, let's do this one.
On the surface, the history of Ireland seems like the tale of one island getting beat up for over 1,000 years straight. And, well, that's not incorrect, I'll be honest with you. But from another perspective, it's a story of a unique civilization rising from the intersection of two very different worlds, and then remarkably enduring through centuries of subjugation and hardship. When it's all too common to see entire cultures wiped from existence because of colonial oppression, Ireland is a very hard-fought counterexample. To see what makes Ireland's history so special and to learn how Irish culture survived to the present day, let's do some history. This video is brought to you by Audible. More on that later. Our story begins with the migration of the Celts from Central Europe sometime in the 5th to 3rd-ish centuries BC. Okay, look, it's an ancient migration, alright? Dates are gonna be finicky on this one. And they settled on this little island here, which they named Eire after the goddess Eru, which I maybe said right? I don't know. I'm just gonna try and say as few Irish names as possible so I don't embarrass myself, which is where we get the name Ireland. And speaking of language, they spoke an early version.
Didn't know Ireland was named after a god. So Celtics came from Central Europe in, I guess, 5th or 3rd century BC. And around that time, they named it after one of their ancient gods, I guess.
Of Irish.
I don't know. I always thought of Ireland as Catholics like forever because I don't know the ancient history, but yeah, why not?
Which is a subset of the Gaelic language family, which is a subset of the Celtic language family. Not confusing at all. Though Ireland's didn't have a written literary tradition, the culture venerated storytelling bards, as well as druids, who are priest-like figures that doubled as historians, judges, and even doctors. Another popular profession in Ireland was, surprisingly enough, king, because there was no overarching central authority, so Ireland usually had somewhere around 150 local tuatha that each had their own king. And there were no cities at this point either, so people just clustered into groups on available farmland and got to it. Though Ireland wasn't politically unified, they shared many elements of art and religion, from Celtic knots to Cuchulainn. Irish mythology is rad, and you can see some examples here, but there are also all manner of gods, heroes, and some pretty—
Oh yeah, I reacted to both of those. Those were just awesome.
bonkers magic too. Sadly, we don't have as much information on them as we might like because the Irish mythological cycle wasn't codified until centuries later, and parts of it have since been lost. Plus, the stories themselves sometimes conflict with one another.
Cuchulainn is from Ulster, right? I mean, he's supposed to be incarnation of some god, yeah.
They're on account of how regional these oral traditions were. Though we today only know so much about early Celtic Ireland, the picture gets clearer and the culture gets richer with Ireland's second big arrival, Christianity. Ireland actually got the good end of the deal on this one because their conversion was peaceful and it didn't involve them getting invaded by Rome. Win-win, and quite the opposite in fact, as Irish pirates often found their way to the western coast of Roman Britain. In one instance, a captured young Roman lived in Ireland for 6 years before—
Damn, so that's unusual, right? I mean, you know, they have that ancient gods and religions, but then, you know, Christianity comes and they're like, all right, we'll take that. And Romans say, yeah, all right, I guess we won't kill you then. So, you know, they didn't get the worst side of the Romans because of that. Damn, I mean, that doesn't happen much in history, right? Usually religious wars are the so widespread thing. You don't believe in my God, I'm going to make you believe in my God. So usually that's the mentality that goes around. But yeah, it's the best way to, I guess, yeah, all right, fine, we're Christian.
Before escaping back to Britain, and after some soul-searching, he trained in France to become a priest and set back out to Ireland in the hopes of converting the people to Christianity. Though he wasn't the first missionary to Ireland, this Saint Patrick, as you've probably guessed, was certainly the most consequential. The dates for his life and career are all over the place, and there's even a theory that Saint Patrick is actually an amalgamation of two different characters, but this show is history summarized, and I am super not qualified to settle very much ongoing debates in the
St. Patrick's Day, right? Oh yeah.
Academic historical community. But what we can say for certain is that he never drove the snakes out of Ireland, because Ireland never had snakes. That's just a very polite code word for pagans. And even that isn't fully accurate. Patrick, buddy, you're killing me here. Because Celtic culture didn't just go away. It's a classic example of syncretism, where the goal is to make two disparate cultures coexist rather than have one completely supplant the other. Latin was introduced, but it was spoken right alongside Irish Gaelic. Monasteries were built all around the island, but they were regionally autonomous. Jesus was the new number one, but the old Irish mythology remained firmly in the popular conscience. Best of both worlds.
Ooh, that is the best way of doing things, right? This is the best example of how to do things. Obviously, that's not how the world worked. Otherwise, we wouldn't have so many religious wars. But look at that. It was like, fine, Christianity is the number one thing. We'll have that. But we'll also keep our mythology and we'll just walk side by side. That is awesome. That is probably why, Irish mythology survived in the first place.
The timing of all this couldn't have been better, because while mainland Europe was splintering out into dozens of Gothic kingdoms in the wake of the Western Roman Empire's collapse, Ireland just got a jolt of new culture to play with and about 400 years of complete peace to refine it. The strongest literary tradition in Europe was made in Irish monasteries, often called scriptoria, where accounts of old Irish mythology were written alongside beautifully decorated manuscripts of the Bible. All around, Ireland was known as the Isle of Saints and Scholars, and it's because of their hard work that so much ancient Latin work survives today. Irish missionaries to Europe even laid the groundwork for Charlemagne's 9th century Renaissance in France. It's also during this golden age that we see and hear two core symbols of Irish culture, the Celtic cross and the harp. The cross appears in stone all over Ireland, and it's a perfect visual metaphor for how Celtic Irish culture is literally woven into Irish Christianity. Again, all this while the rest of Europe was having some serious, let's call it growing pains. Although Ireland was decentralized in both government and religion, it enjoyed over 4 centuries of peace between the numerous Tuatha and no threat of invasion. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and all shiny things must get raided by Vikings. And speaking of Vikings! Though Ireland didn't quite get hit as bad as the English and Scots one island over, Ireland saw its fair share of coastal looting and burning. Monasteries were an easy target because of their abundance of treasures.
Damn, imagine that, right? I mean, you're living golden age where there's peaceful time and all, your people is known throughout the world as, scholars and things, right? Writing scripts and everything. And then everything's great going on Ireland, and the Vikings come. Obviously, they attack the mainland of Britain, right? Scotland mostly, and then England. But Ireland also, they attacked Ireland. So imagine just, being there, being Catholic, right? I mean, religion kind of ties you up with the rest of the Europe, right? All the Christianity places, you can kind of relate to that, right? With all the languages and thing. And suddenly these people come with the axis who's not Christians, right? And they just basically raids everywhere because they are that badass. I mean, that would be so weird. Like, what the hell? Where did this come from?
Like gemstone-covered manuscripts and their non-abundance of defensive fortifications. The Vikings did, however, contribute Ireland's first cities of Dublin, Cork, Waterford, and others settled along the island's coasts. And as the Vikings got comfortable in their cities and chilled out enough to stop with the damn raiding all the time, their cities became hubs for trade and production. Ultimately, though, Ireland's much bigger problem for the next 1,000 years would come from right across the channel. And oh golly gosh, would you look at the clock, it's time to complain about England. Woo! Sorry, professionalism. So while Ireland was having a good time minding its own business and not bothering anyone else, the Anglo-Normans came over to establish the Lordship of Ireland, which sounds a lot more, complete than it actually was. England held on to the urban population centers in the east, but because of stuff like wars and plague, it was pretty patchy for the next 5 centuries. But in 1509, Henry VIII became king and decided that he wanted to be a really big deal, so it's here that things start getting rough. See, Henry converted to Protestantism after he got tired of killing his wives and wanted to just divorce them instead, but Ireland remained firmly Catholic. This displeased Henry, so he made a new push to colonize Ireland, and England made steady progress in beating up on the Irish, taking more and more of their land, and busting down their monasteries and churches.
Okay, what the fuck? I never put it down like that. I never thought of it like that. But yeah, Henry VIII basically wanted to bang as many people as he can and, divorce the wives as much as he can. So he said, fuck you, Catholic Church. And he built the, Church of England, became Protestant. And that what started the issue between Ireland and England, because Ireland wanted to stay Catholic. Obviously, there's no go like, okay, you want to bang how many people you want to bang, but why should we change our religion? So Henry VIII wanted to marry lots of people and divorce them the way he wanted. And that's what caused all the issues between England and Ireland that led to the potato famine, all the disastrous things there was. Because around that time, Irish people didn't have their land because English all took them, right? That wouldn't have happened if Henry VIII didn't create the Church of England at that time. I never put it like that. That's going to go into history, right? For millennia. Imagine in the year 3000 something, somebody talks about this. Like, why this happened? Because Henry VIII wanted to have so many wives.
Surprisingly, the Irish rebelled several times. In the decade after the union of the English and Scottish crowns in 1603, King James confiscated Irish land in the northern region of Ulster to make way for Scottish colonists to start private plantations. And this marks the start of a couple unfortunate defining trends for the next 3 centuries. First is the treatment of Ireland as a subservient colony and the steady seizure of Irish land, and also the persecution of Catholicism through strict social laws. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Irish farmers became tenants in their own island. And
okay, what I don't understand is, religion is the one thing that's pretty strong in people's mind, right? Fear of God and, anything God related. So how did Henry VIII convince the entire English population that, okay, Church of England is a new thing, okay, you're not Catholic? How did people just went like, oh no, I'm Catholic, I'm just not going to be Catholic now because you said so? Maybe he vilified the Pope and Vatican, right? I mean, Pope was doing lots of shady shit. We also saw that in lots of videos from this channel. So I guess it wasn't so hard to vilify them. So Henry VIII says a Pope is become dictator or something and this and that. He's not a man of the God, so we'll create Church of England that actually worships the God or something like that. In that sense, he convinced them, because it would be not so easy to convince people to leave the religion and join a new version of it.
This process only accelerated with the advent of anti-royalist and Civil War extraordinaire Oliver Cromwell, who murdered his way across Ireland during his War of the Three Kingdoms. More land was confiscated, Catholic Irish were forcibly evicted and also banned from certain jobs, and for the next 300 years, Ireland was regarded as little more than a conquered colony. Although the anti-Catholic laws were largely repealed by the turn of the 19th century, Ireland was still poorer going into the 1800s than it had arguably ever been, as its production and wealth were systematically siphoned off to Britain. Only the majority British pockets of the island in Dublin and Ulster saw much improvement, and it was these Ulster Irish who spoke for Ireland in the new United Kingdom's Parliament. If this all sounds short-sighted, exploitative, and extremely fragile, you'd be correct. But wait, it only gets worse. See, Ireland's agriculture was, well, dangerously precarious. Most of their food production was beef exports to Britain, and that didn't leave a whole lot of available farmland on Ireland for feeding the Irish. So the tenant farmers turned to potatoes, which had by far the most nutritional value for the space they took to grow. Not super great that the systematic exploitation of their land forced Catholic Irish to subsist entirely on a single food staple for generations, but at least they're not starving. So anyway, in 1846, the potato blight hit Ireland and all of the crops failed, so people started starving.
Yeah.
Cool. The thing is, potato crops were going rotten all across America and Europe. Ireland was just the only place where potatoes were the only option. But with the crisis at hand, Parliament acted swiftly to provide rations and relief to... No, I'm just kidding. Parliamentarians in London insisted that the reports of famine were completely overblown and refused to divert resources.
That is so effed up, right? I mean, it kind of pissed me off during the entire series. I don't think I would have been so pissed, in any other series from Extra History than that, I think. So that was just effed up, right? The way, people in London, right, handled that situation was so effed up, right? I mean, humans' lives didn't matter. It's all about the politics. Entire towns were starved. And what the effed up thing about is that this is, this is British land, right? It's not some country in Africa where towns are starving. Because at least you can process that, like it's some country in Africa, understand that. But British islands, right, in here, right, one of the British colonies, and entire towns are starving, and you're saying nobody can really feed them, nobody can provide money to feed them, while everybody was just worrying about their politics rather than human lives, while there are slaves in America who are sending money to help them throughout the globe. Different countries who are not as wealthy as British Empire were helping. So that was just effed up.
For aid. Help did slowly arrive, but it was predicated on putting Ireland through economic reforms to modernize their infrastructure. Yeah, because that's exactly what Ireland was asking for. Not food. God, no. Laissez-faire mercantilism. Way to read the room, guys. Eventually, the blight passed and things slowly returned to normal, but not before 1 in 7 people died of starvation and 1 in 4 fled to places like America. This would be why New York and Boston have big Irish communities that materialize out of nowhere in the late 1840s. The more you know. And real quick before we move on to the 1900s, it's not a coincidence that the areas least affected by the famine were the Protestant parts. And if that wasn't bad enough, Britain was also busy shutting down the last remaining hedge schools that taught Greek and Latin to Catholic kids. Before this, Ireland's Catholicism had produced the longest continuous tradition of Greek and Latin anywhere on earth. But God.
Yeah. Alright, packet of lads, the only language you'll be needing is the Queen's English. Thank you very much. I mean, that really worked, right? I mean, technically English is the international language. Here I'm speaking here. I'm an Indian, I'm speaking English here. Why? Because I know everybody in the world can understand English. If they're going to understand a language, they're going to understand English, right? So, people might have their local language, but everybody is going to try to understand how to speak English because it became the world's language. Catholic calendar became the world's calendar, so yeah.
God forbid kids who aren't Anglican be allowed to learn. Gross. So, what to do from here? Well, if you're the population of Ireland in the early 1900s, the answer was literally anything else, and that echoed in a call for home rule and their own independent government. However, Ulster was still fiercely unionist, and it almost looked like pro-union and pro-home rule paramilitary groups were going to start fighting about it when World War I suddenly became a much more pressing issue. But on Easter of 1916, Irish insurgents occupied government buildings in Dublin, so the British Army shelled them into surrender and then executed the rebel leaders. This, you may guess, did not sit super great with the Irish public, so as soon as the World War was over, Ireland fought a guerrilla war of independence, and in 1922 it was granted home rule as their own free state under the British Crown. And in the late 30s and 40s, Ireland transitioned into a fully independent republic. Ulster, however, opted to stay in the UK and became...
Yeah, basically the handling of Irish, potato famine basically feed that, like how we are being treated, how we are not even worth saving. That's how they're seeing us. So that basically led to all this.
Known as Northern Ireland. The split between North and South came to a head in the latter part of the century, as Northern Irish Catholics still faced heavy discrimination, and their peaceful protests met violent opposition. And this erupted into the Troubles, 3 decades of insurgency, terrorism, and police brutality in Northern Ireland, as IRA irregulars fought against Ulster volunteer forces and British police to end British rule in Northern Ireland. After some 3,500 casualties, most of them civilian, the Good Friday Agreement of 1998 mandated that Northern Ireland could vote to unify with the Republic at any time they liked, and that there would never again be a hard border on the island between North and South. Oh, dear God, not again. Whew, criminy, even when Irish history lets up, it doesn't let up.
Yeah, but that is not going to be hard border even today, right? I mean, it's one of the videos I talked about that, like, they just decided there is kind of a check border between Ireland, right, of part of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, whatever that is, Northern Ireland, and I guess Great Britain, right, British Isles. So there's going to be check there, which is basically just going to show Northern Ireland like, okay, I guess you're not part of the United Kingdom now because we are checking between these stages. So that's just going to lead, sooner or later, going to lead from them asking for independence, because it feels like that's how it's going to happen, right? Either have a hard border where there is a massive issue, not have hard border which they are going with. I guess that's the best answer right now. But that also creates a checkpoint between Northern Ireland and England, and that's basically gonna separate Northern Ireland from United Kingdom sooner or later.
Meanwhile, the Republic of Ireland enacted a series of economic and political reforms to lift the country out of hundreds of years of poverty. And today the people of Ireland are safer, richer, better fed, and freer to express their religion than they've been in centuries.
And providing food in African countries and everywhere, because, I guess the scars are still, somewhat there from the potato famine.
It's distressing to see Ireland so cruelly oppressed for so long, but it's inspiring to see the past century's reclamation of Irish culture and their long-deserved independence. In Ireland, history is never far away. The legacy of their centuries-long golden age is everywhere from the Celtic cross to the Irish language, and the painful memory of the Great Famine has motivated Ireland to become a world's leader in international food aid, and I will gladly raise a pint to that. In ancient Ireland, monks had to copy entire manuscripts by hand, but now it's never been easier to get instant access to a world of literature thanks to today's sponsor, Audible. With enough audiobooks to fill a script.
Yeah, people, go to audible.com/only sarcastic. I've reacted to quite a few videos from this channel, and very few videos from this channel are sponsored. So I guess, if there is a one channel you should support, it should be this, because this is a great channel. I've never come across any other like this, all the mythological videos and things. So yeah. Alright people, that was History Summarized Ireland. I did the Scotland, I did the England, I guess, recently, and now I did the Ireland. So yeah, if you like my Rickson, don't like and subscribe. Check out the Rickson, did the link in the description. Check out the crossover playlist, and if you want to react to any specific video, comment down, and I'll see you next time.